Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. John Elliff, and today we're interviewing John L. Long. Today is January the 16th, 2007, and we're in Sterling, Colorado, and we're in John's home, and he's going to tell us about his experiences in World War II, in the Navy, and what happened to him during that period of his life. So, John, what's your name?
John L. Long.
Yeah, that guy. And when did you enter the service?
September the 4th, 1941.
Okay. Now, where were you when you entered the service?
At Riverton, Wyoming, my hometown.
Yeah, that was your hometown, huh?
Uh-huh.
And how old were you?
I was just 18 years old.
18, uh-huh. So you could join the Navy at 18 without your parents' consent, is that correct?
I think that is correct.
Yeah.
And what made you want to join the Navy?
Well, my dad had sent my sister to nurses training, but he wouldn't send me to college, so this other boy that parents had passed away, and my dad had been that way when he was young. So we decided to go to the Navy to get an education, and that's why we went.
And so where did you sign up?
In Denver, Colorado.
In Denver. So you went to Denver and signed up there? And
we took examination and then signed up, and then we went back to Denver the day I entered the Navy, September the 4th.
September the 4th, okay. So then what did the Navy do with you? I mean, did they say, you're one of the great Wyoming guys and we're going to do something with you?
We went to the basic training in San Diego, and we signed up for a school, and I signed up for an ordnanceman, and we were sent to Alameda, California, to train at the new Naval Air Station at Alameda. The war broke out, and in December of '41, then I went overseas to the Hawaiian Islands, to Pearl Harbor, and worked quite some time cleaning up the mess that was around there and getting everything ready to protect ourselves and to invade Japan.
So you went to Pearl after December the 7th when they bombed Pearl.
That's right.
But how long after the December the 7th did you get to Pearl?
Right close to January 1st.
So you were in there right early after after Pearl, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well then, and they had you guys cleaning up the sunken ships and trying to recover people and things like that?
Our Naval Air Station, and getting the planes ready for making sure the guns worked on the planes, and cleaning up the armory and cleaning up the airfield. And then we worked on the California, and and after that the Oklahoma. But we would just go there when they needed the help real bad, and that was quite often. And we had service, and I was training in the aviation ordnance, so that I kind of wanted to go to sea, but I didn't know whether I would or not. And then after about a year in Pearl, well, it was less than a year, in April of '42, I was assigned to the Enterprise because of the new guns they had on the planes, and we went to on the Doolittle raid, and then came back to Pearl after they launched that, and then I got back on the Naval Air Station, and the chief on the Enterprise wanted me, and they got called out for the Battle of Midway, And then when they came back, they had a couple more cruises, but I wasn't on it. And then in October of 42, the Enterprise went to the States to get a renovation and get 40 millimeters, and we had 20 millimeters put on previous to that. So the 40 millimeters were quads and very effective in air defense.
The quads, you mean they're 4 guns in,
Four guns
in
to
a
a
mount?
mount, yeah.
Yeah, and they fired alternately.
Yeah, and we had 180 guns, all told, 5-inch, 20 millimeter, and 40 millimeter on that ship.
On the Lexington?
On the Enterprise.
Oh, the Enterprise, excuse me, yeah, Enterprise. Now, the Enterprise was a aircraft carrier.
Yes.
And so, and the Enterprise was a ship that launched the Doolittle raid, is that correct?
Yes. No, the other ship had the planes on it, and we were air cover for them.
Oh, for the other
Yeah.
ship, yeah, okay. So you went back to the States, you refurbished with the heavy more armament.
No, we didn't go to the States. We went back to Pearl Harbor.
Oh, the Pearl, okay.
Yeah.
And then what did you do after that?
Well, I went back on the base, and I was waiting for them to get me clearance to get on the Enterprise. And in the meantime, they decided they'd go to the States in October of 43. When they came back out, then in November of 43, I got on the Enterprise, and that was the beginning of the sweep across the Pacific with the Gilberts and the Marshalls and Inuit and Tarawa and on across the Philippines. And then we went from there to the Okinawa Battles. And during that time, we were attacked by suicide planes after we got over by the Philippines. And that was a completely different war. And we'd been hit, the ship had been hit 25 times by bombs and 7 suicide planes. And they had over 200 near misses, dove on us, and we shot them down before they got to us.
Now, what battle was that? The Battle of the Coral Sea, or what battle was that?
All the battles from the Philippines into Okinawa. Yeah.
So, and how many battle engagements would you guess you were involved in?
17.
17 major
battles,
huh? Yeah. And what was the most impressive one that you were involved in?
I think the most impressive to me was Iwo Jima. We were there before the invasion, and then we were there during the invasion, and I had 2 friends that I'd went to school with in Riverton, Wyoming, that were in the Marine Corps, and they were on there. And I always worried about them. And then the main thing I was worried about is getting the prisoner of war schoolmate who was a prisoner of war in Luzon. And I was always had my aim of my life was to release him from being a prisoner of the Japanese.
He got captured in Luzon.
Yeah.
When the Americans left earlier in the war, is that
yes.
right?
He was
in the Bataan March?
Yes. He was in the Philippines the day the war started.
Oh, wow. So he got stuck there.
Yes.
Did he survive that?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. A lot of guys didn't.
Yeah. He was very humble when he came back. He was an all-state football player and a good athlete, but when he come back, if you told him to do something, he just said, "Go sit down, Clyde." He'd go sit down.
Is that right?
But he'd been mistreated in the prisoner of war camp.
Oh, that's too bad. When did you see him after the war? Was it after the war, or was it after those involvements, or
it was
did
after,
you run into him over there?
It was after the war.
Uh-huh.
When I came home in Christmas of '45, I got to see him.
Yeah.
And I had lost my football coach, and the guy that I played football with, he was 6'4", Bill Forrester, was shot down in the B-24 south of Lady, and my coach was shot down in an attack bomber at Rabaul, and they found neither one of them ever found their bodies or could retrieve them.
Oh.
And that was for me to think about that. And what the reason was, we met in Honolulu in '42, and our coach, we went to the Royal Hawaiian, and when we got ready to leave, Bill said, those 2 Marines and 5 of us from Riverton, he said, here's a $silver, it'll take you home once. And I don't know why he said that, but him and my coach were the only 2 that went home once, and when they come back out, they were killed.
Oh. So how long were you on the Enterprise?
I was on it permanently from November of '43 till the end of the war. We got hit in June of '45, came back to the States, and then the war ended before they could repair our ship. And I stayed on it, and then we went to the East Coast, went through the Panama Canal and the East Coast, and took a load of prisoners on our hangar deck, about 1,500 of them, and took them to New York because they lived on the East Coast. And we were there October the 27th for Navy Day, and we got a presidential citation.
Now, what was your rank when you were in the Navy?
I started out as an ordnanceman 3rd class, 2nd class. I was a lead petty officer, 1st class, and a fighter squadron in V5. And then when I pulled a pilot out of a plane and saved his life, jumped down off the plane and run with him, the plane exploded. I was promoted to chief petty officer, and I was offered chief warrant officer, but the youngest one on the ship was 50 years old, and I was only 23, 24. So I didn't take it. I did take the chief petty officer.
50-year-old warrants on the carrier there, huh?
Yes. Uh-huh.
A warrant was a guy that was neither, I always said they were neither fish nor fowl. They were between the officers and the enlisted guys.
That's right.
Warrants were special people. But you were a chief.
Yes.
And the chiefs ran the Navy. That's what they used to tell. I was in the Navy, but not like you. And they used to tell me the chiefs ran the Navy.
And the guys in my division said the only reason I made chief was I was on a reservation at Riverton, Wyoming.
Well, that's a good enough reason, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
So, okay. Do you have any? Let's see. So you got home. Did you go back to Riverton when you came home?
On leave.
Yeah.
In June of '45, and then I was. They took me off the ship in Boston, and '45 was the first Christmas that I'd been home in 4 years.
Wow. I
got to Riverton. And then I went back to Maine, and I went on the Kearsarge. I was the leading chief on the Kearsarge.
What was the Kearsarge? Was that another carrier?
An aircraft carrier.
Another carrier, huh?
Yeah.
And what kind of planes did you guys launch?
The first part of the war was F-4Fs and TBMs, and then we launched F-6Fs and torpedo bombers and I'm trying to think. Can't think of the name of that other plane.
Oh, that's okay. But they were basically fighter bombers. Is that what they were?
Yes.
And torpedo planes.
The largest ones were torpedoes. None of the torpedoes were loaded on them planes. They loaded bombs and done bombing on airstrips and on other carriers and stuff. But they didn't use torpedoes after the 43. We began to go across the Pacific.
Yeah, they said torpedoes weren't very effective off those planes. I guess I don't know what they were. Weren't they?
No, and the bombs are more effective. And we had F-6F fighters protecting the TBMs is what they were, and they'd protect them, and then they'd do the bombing. The fighters would have maybe one bomb on them, and that was it. Plus 6 rockets, and we probably loaded. We'd load them sometimes twice a day on 30 planes, and so that was a job. And they weighed about 150 pounds, and it took 2 of us to put them up on the wing of the plane.
All right.
And then I had to plug them in when they took off the catapult, and that was they'd lay the wings down, and then I'd run up behind the plane and I'd plug it in, and another guy plugged the other side in, and they were off, and they were very effective at Iwo Jima and all the rest of the battles.
Well, now, were those air-to-air or air-to-ground rockets?
They were, they fired them at the ground, and they did fire a few of them at other planes, but not very often.
Yeah. They weren't those heat-seeking type missiles or anything like that.
They were what?
Heat-seeking. They weren't heat-seeking.
No.
No, they weren't that sort of thing.
They were like a 5-inch gun shell.
Yeah, they're bigger. So you, let's see what hold it. For you had a kamikaze hit the ship and knock you clear across the place.
That was the last one that hit us, and it blew the front elevator out and killed 80-some men. And I was around the island structure, and it projected. The explosions were very forceful, and I was lucky enough to be by that island structure and could get behind it to get most of the pressure off of me.
Now, when you say the forward elevator, that was the elevator that brought the planes up to the deck, is that right?
We had 3 elevators from the hangar deck, and the middle elevator we didn't use very often, but the rear elevator we used to bring the planes up, and then they'd taxi pilots to get in them and taxi them on up to the catapults. We used catapults quite a bit on the carrier.
Yeah. The catapults were steam driven?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they would be from 0 to about 90 miles an hour on a couple 100 feet.
Really sling them off there.
Yeah, they'd swing them off. If they loaded with bombs, then that give them extra lift off the carrier.
So.
And the other thing that we had in the Pacific was typhoons, and some of them were 140, 150 miles an hour, but we were in 5 of them that were over 180 miles an hour, and I'll tell you, that was
Wow.
a scary part of our fish. And most of them, well, the Philippines, when we got over to the Philippines, then the typhoons started hitting.
What on those typhoons? About the main thing was just to stay afloat and stay into the wind and
get the ship turned into the wind, into the waves that were coming at us.
Right.
And our task force had 4 carriers, 8 battle wagons. Oh no, four battle wagons, 8 cruisers, and 20 destroyers, and they'd spread out. And we had 3 units like that in the Philippines, 58.1, 2, and 3. And when they were spread out, we were about 100 miles wide and about 30, 40 miles deep.
Wow. A lot of manpower.
Yes.
A lot of ship power.
That's what defeated the Japanese. And we were landing Marines in most of the invasion, the attacks we were in. We were landing the Marines.
Cut.
I was injured January 5th, 1945, and we were rearming the planes, and we were in front of the front barrier, and they'd land the planes and lay the barrier down, and the planes would taxi up and get on that side, and we would begin to rearm them. And this one day, on January 5th, this fighter plane come in, and he tried to land, and his tail hook was shot out. He gunned his motor and come over, and he hit right in the group of planes that I was on. And they said it probably blew me about 40, 50 foot in the air. And I come down, I was in the sick bay 5 days, but I wouldn't stay down there because I was afraid of the suicide planes. So my men in my division took me up, and my arms weren't working very well, so they they took care of me, fed me, and helped me change my clothes. And I wasn't much help. I was in the island structure where our armory was, and about 15, 20 days, then I could move around and use my arms and stuff again.
Wow. So you got a few medals here, and you got the, do you know which ones? The Navy Marine Corps Medal for Heroism.
That was when I pulled the pilot out of the plane.
When you got that guy out of the plane landed and the guy couldn't get out, or the plane started to burn. What happened there, Jack?
Well, he was shot up. I jumped upon the plane. The first thing we done when the planes were landing, and when the fighters were landing, I usually jumped up on the planes, 2 or 3 of us, and we'd shut the switch off so the machine guns wouldn't fire. And I could see his head was over and he was bloody, and I grabbed him, and the guy on the other side of the cockpit helped me and threw him up on my back. I jumped down off of the wing of that plane, which was about 4 foot from the ground, and started to run, and I run about 50 foot, and I fell down, and he was right on top of me, and the plane exploded and was at fire. So. And the admiral was looking right down on the flight deck, so that's how I got the medal.
Yeah, well, you earned it. We know that. God. Well, then, what happened to the pilot? Do you know? Did he survive? Or?
Yes, he did.
Uh-huh.
He was. They took him to sick bay, and then they put him off on a hospital ship, and that's the last time I saw him.
Yeah.
Probably 3 or 4 weeks later.
Said you got the Good Conduct Medal. Did you have old gold braid on your...
Yeah.
I used to have... I used to know a chief in the Navy, and he had all gold stuff on him,
Yeah.
which meant that he had good conduct when he got... He might have been a chief, but unless you had that gold, you didn't have good conduct. Is that true?
Well, and also that meant that he'd been in the Navy 4 years.
Oh, a long time, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so your time was mostly on the Enterprise, and you were an ordnance,
Aviation ordnance.
aviation ordnance guy.
And
Yeah.
I was assigned to the fighters that come on the plane. And we had crews on the flight deck that had the fighters, then the torpedo bomber crews are down on the next O1 deck, they called it, and so were the dive bomber crews. Mm-hmm. And our crew was up, and we usually had more fighters than other planes.
Your Enterprise destroyed 911 enemy planes.
Right.
It says here. Yeah. So, okay. So the Enterprise engaged in 18 of 20 major actions in the Pacific War. Probably more than any other carrier.
There were 23 after the war. They didn't get awarded some medals the first part of the war, so those were given to the Enterprise, and they were out of Pearl the day the war broke out, and they got a medal for that. And so they were in every engagement in sea battle in the Pacific, and I was in 17 of the 23.
Wow. Now, I was asking you, who was your, you said that was the most active, and it obviously was the most active carrier in the fleet, and who was your commanding officers?
Well, we would change the commanding officer about every 6 months, and Hall and Mitcher, Admiral Mitcher, and he was a captain, and then they made them. Hall was made an admiral, Mitcher was made an admiral, and each captain that was there, and the admirals, two of the admirals came back when Halsey got off, and was based at Pearl Harbor or was on another carrier, but they were very, very good men. And when we'd go on Liberty in Honolulu and we got too drunk and were out of order, the shore patrol would bring us back and bring the men back to the quarterdeck. And as soon as they hit the quarterdeck, they'd just say, "Go get in your bunk," and they'd never file any charges. Like Halsey said, when I was driving him one day, he said, "Son, do you have fun when you come into Pearl?" And I said, "Admiral, I sure do." And he said, "Do you get out of line?" And I said, "Not really." So, and he would always call me son. He'd say, "Son," and I was just completely ecstatic about having him driving this van. And when we're in a battle, just like now, he said, when we're in the Philippines and we pulled out, 38.1 pulled out of the task force and went after this Japanese fleet. And when we got back to Honolulu, he said, "Son, if they give me any trouble, I'll tell them if they want to fight this war, come out and do it." He said, "I'm not going to take any guff from them. I done that to save the lives of Americans, and we should fight." Yes.
To you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said that's what he was going to tell them.
Good for you. So you drive Halsey around when you guys had shore leave and stuff like that? Is that the...
When we get into Honolulu, one day we'd have duty, and he'd usually call, and he asked for me a couple of times, and I felt honored to have him do that.
Yeah, that was I agree. He was a great leader.
Yes.
You were a great guy. You guys were a hell of a pair.
Yeah.
So.
And he'd come down on the flight deck when he was on the carrier at night, and he'd walk along and he'd ask us how we're doing, and we'd get down and they'd say, "Now carry on," up and salute him, "just carry on, and he wants you to stay where you're at." And so he'd walk around and talk to us, and we never had to get up and salute him.
That's good. That's a real leader.
Yeah.
So how many men were on the Enterprise when you were at full crew?
2,500.
2,500. Wow.
Yeah. The carriers now have 5,000. You know.
Do they? Wow. So, what would you advise people going into the service?
It's like I told this woman in the draft office that my oldest son was supposed to be there, and I knew he wouldn't be taken in because he had polio. And she was giving him a bad time, so I went with him to this hearing. And we'd been on vacation, we were a few days late. And she said, "Don't you know it's an honor to do this?" And it was the Vietnam War, and I said, "Lady, there's no goddamn honor for this war."
Okay, I think you had something there, huh?
So she dismissed us. And he never did have to go.
So, so you got back to Wyoming, and what happened to you then?
I started, had a service station, and he'd quit farming and ranching. He had a service station, and I worked there, and then I went to work in a oil and gas field out at Beaver Creek. And I worked there about 2 years. And then they got poison gas, and I was married to Mildred then, and I decided I'd quit. And her dad, we went to farming and the livestock business.
Was that around Riverton?
Yes, north of Riverton. And we had a place over at Thermopolis that you could run 400 cows on it.
Oh, wow. So you had a cow-calf operation, did you, or something
Yes,
like that?
uh-huh.
Did you have those severe Wyoming winters where you had to hay those cattle in the wintertime and stuff?
Well, the 48, 49 blizzard was the worst.
Yeah, I remember that. We had a terrible blizzard here that year. So
yeah, it was bad, but about every 10 years or 12 years they'd have a bad winter.
Did you raise hay in the summertime like some of those, and put it up and then feed it during the wintertime?
Yeah, we had that, and we farmed. So once we got the livestock, we were going to do it, and then I had a horse buck with me, and it paralyzed me. And I went into my doctor, and he said, "I'm not going to even look at you. You go to the Mayo Clinic."
Oh, really?
So I went to the Mayo Clinic, and they sent me to Denver, in the VA hospital in Denver, and I got good treatment there. And it was 5 years, and I had to go when I was in a wheelchair, and I went to college at the University of Wyoming, and had my family, and Mildred took care of us. And we was there about 2 years, a little over 2 years. Then I got a job in the bank at Greeley, Colorado, and worked for the exec in our bank. His granddad had been the governor of Colorado, and they had 90 farms north of Greeley. And it was a tremendous, tremendous chance for me to get started in banking.
So you ended up being a banker.
Being a banker after
little
I
add-on interest.
After I got out of the wheelchair and got out of college.
Good for you. Who'd you work for in Greeley?
First National Bank.
But who was the?
Bob Gilbert.
Okay.
And what?
Rex Eaton.
Rex Eaton.
Yeah, Rex Eaton, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. So I used to know some of those folks. Oh, well, and so did you then continue being a banker and till
Yes.
you retired?
Yes, I did.
Is that right? Your son's a banker.
Yes.
Hmm.
I worked for this, and she worked for Social Security. And we moved to Casper, and I went with her and my son Dan. And,
Yeah, I know Epstein.
and what's the guy's name that's here? The president of the bank then was
Coates.
Who?
Coates was the president.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to know some. Well, okay. So you finished your banking career then?
At Casper,
in
Wyoming.
Casper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did
And
you bank in Casper too?
Oh, pardon?
Did you bank in Casper too?
Yes, but just for a short time I fell on the ice and I couldn't walk again. So we were up there 20 years and I worked about 2 out of that 20, or maybe less. But I stayed home and I was a cook and bottle washer. So I helped Mildred by being there.
How many children do you have?
We have 4 children and 11 grandchildren and 12 great-grandchildren. And they're all healthy and none of them are on dope or alcohol or anything, so we're lucky so far.
Well, we know your boy because he's involved in the hospital with me and stuff like that. He does a great job. So, yeah. So.
And our other son works out at the prison, and 2 sons. And he got a divorce and he has a girlfriend now, and she works out there too. So it's a pretty good job. He went out there to teach school. Jim had a degree from the University of Wyoming, and they hired him to teach, and he did for about 4 or 5 months, and then they cut the budget, so they told him he may have to quit. He said, "I'll take a job as a guard," and they've been trying to get him to go back to teaching, but they want to demote him, and he said, "No, whenever you can give me more money, I'll go back teaching."
Yeah. Okay. So, how'd you meet your wife?
Well, I was home and my folks wanted to build. She worked in a lumber yard, and I went in there, and she rolled her eyes at me, and I tried to go with her, but she told me I was drinking too much, so I had to quit drinking. And when I quit drinking, then we got married and started a family. And that was my aim in life, to have children and to raise them and send them to college. And we've done that to all of our children.
Well, that's great.
3 boys and a girl. The girl's the only one that didn't finish college. She's got about 3 years in.
So what's the other boy do?
He has a bar up at Riverton.
Aha.
And he's been in that business, quite a few years, since '82. We helped him get started, and he's done a good job, and he tends to business. And he's a good child to have, and we've had no trouble with him at all.
Well, that's great. So you had a real success besides being a real naval hero. You got a great family, and your wife's a great woman.
Yes.
She told me that.
Well, I'll tell you that too.
There. That's good. Well, now let's look at some of our. Maybe we can look at some of the medals and memorabilia and things like that. Okay.
We're still on.
Now.
I don't know. Unless I had a
Are you-
finger going.
Okay. Now, see if you guys can tell us about these medals. My God, he looks like a holy smoke. Point those out to us and tell us what they are. You know.
This one's a Navy Marine Corps Medal for heroes, and this one's a Victory Medal, World War II, American Defense Medal, the Filipino Defense Medal, Navy Good Conduct Medal, American Campaign Medal, Asiatic Pacific Campaign, and World War II Occupational Medal. This
Wow.
is the Philippine Presidential Unit Citation, Navy Marine Service, American Defense Bar, the Filipino Defense Bar, Navy Unit Commendation Medal, that Navy Marine Corps Medal goes to something, and it's Navy Good Conduct, American Campaign, Asiatic Campaign, and World War II Occupational Bar.
Wow, that's impressive. Now, which one did you get for pulling the pilot out of the plane? That one, huh?
Navy Marine Corps Medal.
Now, that's the second highest award they give, huh? Or the highest award they give?
Second highest.
Second highest. Wow, that's fantastic. That's an impressive. Now, tell us about the, you have all that hash on there. What's that? What's
That's
that?
for 4 years of service.
That's a service stripe,
Yeah.
okay. And what's the
This
shoulder stuff?
Shows the aviation ordnance chief, the 3 stripes under, and the medal and the straight.
Yeah, that's the chief's insignia.
Yes.
Okay. You should give him 10 seconds of it. That's what it. Boy, he's a good-looking guy there with lots of curly hair, and that's when he went in the service. That's nice. And
This is when I'm a first-class petty officer.
yeah.
And my looks is from being through the war, and I was wore out, and it was taken the last part of the war.
This picture right here.
Yes.
Uh-huh. We'll talk while these. That's just when he was. Anyway, that was early in the war, probably, and so.
That's the cheap picture. I think I got an extra one of them underneath it. I make extra copies. And I can make them like that.
Yeah, we'll take a picture. I can just cut, see.
Yeah, there's an extra
When you
one.
edit these, well, you can cut around on them and stuff.
Oh,
Get it?
well, that's just a lead paper he got when he got home. 600 and some
Saved all
dollars.
that money.
I'm recording.
This is the men that was in my division on the Enterprise at the time the picture was taken. Most of us stayed on there almost all the time. So the air groups changed every 6 months, 4 months to 6 months. Fighter.
So he grabbed that pilot and jumped down off that wing with that guy. So that's about 4 or 5 feet. 4 feet anyway.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. Okay.
This is a task force with the Enterprise.
At Midway.
No, this is at Ulithi.
Oh, I had it Midway.
Okay.
Home ec at high school, and we thought we'd catch heck with this old home ec teacher. Her name was Ellen Scheit, and she just thought we were the greatest guys in all the world. We oiled all the sewing machines. Girls got mad at us because she'd treat us so good.
Boot camp, 1941. He was learning. This is a collection of your medals, isn't it? And everything.
Yes.
So, and same ones as before. But why don't you go over them again? Come and help us do that, Mrs. Long. And step right up in there. fall over there. Careful now. Okay.
This is a Navy
Now, just a
Marine.
minute, hon. Sit.
Just say,
Tell us
Okay.
about these. Go ahead.
This is the Navy Marine Corps medal plus the bar, and then the Victory Medal plus the bar, American Defense, Philippine Defense, Navy Good Conduct Medal, American Campaign Medal, Asiatic Pacific Medal, World War II Occupational Medals.
That's it.
I don't know what the Navy Marine Corps Medal, and this is E.
Jack Long for taking his time and then sharing his experiences with us, and he's demonstrated some real sacrifice. So we're really proud of Jack Long and what he's done for his country, and thanks for taking your time.
and thank you.